My name is Chloe and I'm 21 years old. The clock on the wall said 2 minutes past 12 on Christmas Day. My sister Sarah shoved her screaming 3-year-old towards me and said, "Take him! I'm having a Prosecco." I didn't take him. I let my hands drop to my sides. The baby wailed. Sarah froze, glass halfway to her mouth. "I said take him," she snapped. I looked at the 12 people in the room, parents, cousins, siblings, all waiting for the family servant to obey. I smiled, picked up my car keys and said the loudest thing I've ever spoken, "Not this year." "Hey friend, it's getting late. Have you taken your vitamins yet? Don't let a bit of family drama mess with your health. Go on, settle into your comfiest chair and let's get into this story." Our house in Watford had always felt like it belonged to my sisters more than it belonged to me. Even when they weren't there, you could still feel them in the walls. Sarah and Emma were the ones my parents talked about like they were a proud little display in a cabinet. "Sarah got top marks again," Mum would say at dinner, beaming. "Emma got the lead in the school play," Dad would announce to anyone who'd listen, as if we needed a press release. And I'd sit there moving peas around my plate, trying not to take up space. It wasn't that they were cruel, not in a loud, obvious way. It was worse than that. It was quiet, casual, like I just didn't matter as much. I remember when Sarah brought her first boyfriend home. She was 16 and he looked terrified, standing in our hallway trying to shake Dad's hand without sweating through his sleeve. I was 4, peeking through the banister rails, watching like it was some kind of grown-up program I wasn't meant to see. Emma wasn't far behind. She started dating at 15 and suddenly the house was full of talk about who fancied who'd been seen with whom, who was nice, who wasn't. They were both so confident, so pretty, so effortless. Mum would barely glance at me as she helped Sarah pick out a dress for a school dance. "Chloe, do your homework." With Emma it was always, "Have you thought about what you'll do after 6th form?" I learnt early on to just manage myself, to keep quiet, to do my own thing, to stop expecting attention that was clearly already spoken for. When I was 7, Mum burst into the kitchen one morning like she'd won the lottery. "Have you heard?" she said, practically buzzing. "Sarah's got an offer from Leeds." The news was followed by a proper fry-up. Photos, calls to relatives, Mum and Dad floating about the house like they might take off. I sat in my usual seat, chewing politely, feeling invisible as ever. Emma left for university 2 years later, and then it was just me. Me and my parents, in a house that felt both too empty and still somehow full of my sisters. Their rooms stayed the same, like little museums, trophies, old photos, bits of their lives arranged neatly as if they might walk back in at any moment and carry on. I carved out my own space where I could, mostly by staying out of the way. I got used to being alone. I got good at it, actually. I told myself I liked it. It didn't hurt if you pretended you didn't care. The real shift started when I was 15. Sarah, now married and living not far away, had her first baby. A boy called Tyler. I still remember the day she brought him home, everyone fussing and cooing and acting as if the sun had risen for the first time. Mum squeezed my shoulder, smiling like she was giving me a gift. "You'll be such a wonderful aunt." At the time it sounded nice, warm, like she was including me in something. Looking back, I can see it for what it was, the moment the job got handed to me without anyone bothering to ask if I wanted it. At first I was genuinely excited. Tyler was tiny and squishy and made those funny little baby faces. I didn't mind holding him while Sarah and Mum chatted in the kitchen with cups of tea. But it didn't stay like that for long. It started with what sounded like a harmless request. One Saturday morning, Sarah turned up at Mum and Dad's, Tyler on her hip, already pulling her handbag strap over her shoulder. "Chloe," she said, like she was about to ask me to pass the salt, "can you watch Tyler for a couple of hours? I just need to pop into town." I barely had time to blink before she'd placed him in my arms. "Thanks, love, you're the best," she called, already halfway out the door. That became the pattern. Every weekend, Sarah would arrive, hand me Tyler, and disappear for hours. Sometimes it was shopping, sometimes it was lunch with friends, sometimes it was a quick errand that somehow lasted most of the day. always with that breezy, pleased tone like she'd done something clever. One day, after she'd been gone 5 hours, I finally said something to Mum. "It's not fair," I told her, frustration bubbling out of me. "I was meant to meet Jenny at the shopping centre." Mum didn't even look up from her magazine. "Family helps family, Chloe. Your sister needs a break. You'll understand when you've got children." It was like my plans didn't count as real plans. I was 16 when Emma announced she was pregnant. "It's a girl!" she squealed at Sunday dinner as if she was revealing the winner of a prize. Everyone celebrated. Dad opened a bottle, Mum cried happy tears, and I felt my stomach tighten because I knew what was coming. When Sophie arrived, it was like the whole thing reset, but worse. Now it wasn't just Tyler. It was Tyler and a baby. Weekends became a circus. Try helping a toddler stack blocks while trying to stop a baby from crying, while also trying to do homework. It sounds funny when you say it out loud. It wasn't funny when you were living it, with sticky hands grabbing your pens and a tiny voice shouting your name over and over, until it felt like your skull was vibrating. Homework didn't happen until they were both asleep, if they slept at the same time, which was rare. And if I looked tired, Mum would say, "Oh, go on, you're young, you'll cope." One Saturday, I was bouncing Sophie on my hip while Tyler was colouring on our coffee table instead of his book, and I said to Dad, "Jason asked me to go to the cinema tonight." Dad didn't take his eyes off the telly. "Well, you should have thought about that before agreeing to watch them." "I never agreed," I snapped louder than I meant to. "Nobody asks me. They just hand them over." Sophie started crying at the sudden noise. From the kitchen, Mum called, sharp and annoyed, "Lower your voice, you're upsetting the baby. And honestly, Chloe, stop being selfish. Your sisters need support." Selfish. That word lodged itself in me like a splinter. After that, I started spending as much time as I could at school, in the library, anywhere that wasn't home, on a weekend. I threw myself into studying, not because I loved it, but because it was the only thing that felt like a way out. Every good grade felt like a rung on a ladder. When my offer from the University of Manchester came through, with a bursary attached, I thought I might actually float off the floor. For a brief moment, I felt like I could breathe. My family, though, had other ideas. It came up during what Mum called a family meeting, which was her polite way of saying she'd decided something and expected me to agree. Sarah went first, all sensible voice and fake concern. "The University of Hertfordshire has decent courses. You could stay at home and save money. And be nearby," Emma added brightly, like it was a perk. "You know, to help out." I looked around the living room. Mum, Dad, Sarah, Emma, and Gran Rose, sitting quietly in her chair, hands folded, watching everyone like she was taking notes. I opened my mouth, ready to argue, but before I could, Gran Rose spoke. "Actually," she said, calm as anything, and everyone turned towards her. "Manchester sounds perfect for Chloe." Sarah blinked. Mum's smile tightened. Gran carried on, voice steady. "It's a good university. She's worked hard. She deserves to go." Then she looked straight at Mum and Dad. "And there's money in your father's education fund, the one he set up for the grandkids. It will cover what her bursary doesn't." I could have hugged her so hard I'd knocked her glasses off. The meeting ended with my parents and sisters looking annoyed and put out, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I could see my future clearly, and it didn't involve being dragged upstairs with someone else's children. University was everything I'd dreamed it would be. My room in halls felt like mine. My friends were real friends. The weekends were mine. No babies, no toddlers, no sticky fingerprints on everything I owned. Just me, and choices that belonged to me. But you don't completely escape family, especially around the holidays. I tried to go home as little as possible, but Christmas and Easter were treated as non-negotiable. Mum would ring weeks in advance, voice thick with expectation. "Everyone's asking after you, Chloe. The kids miss their aunt." They didn't miss me. They barely knew me. But Mum said it like it was a fact, like I was being cruel if I didn't show up. The first Christmas after I started university, I walked in and realised nothing had changed. It had multiplied. Sarah now had 2 boys, Tyler and his baby brother Luke. Emma had added a boy called Max alongside Sophie, and that was before you counted the extended family. The moment I stepped through the door, my aunt spotted me like a hawk. "Chloe," she called, steering her twin 5-year-olds towards me. "They've been dying to see you." No, they haven't, I thought. They just know I'm the one who ends up supervising. Before I could even say hello properly, my cousin's daughter wrapped herself around my leg, and then another child appeared, and another, as if someone had opened a gate. Mum called from the kitchen, half hidden behind a mountain of washing up and serving dishes. "Chloe, love, why don't you take the kids upstairs to your room? I'll bring some snacks up in a bit." And just like that, I was herding 8 children up the stairs, feeling less like a university student and more like a stressed-out after-school club leader. My old bedroom turned into a war zone. Toys everywhere. Juice spilled on my childhood duvet. A crayon appeared out of nowhere, and I watched, helpless, as a child drew a line along my wall like it was perfectly normal. Hours went by. The smell of food drifted up from downstairs. A proper Christmas dinner, roast meat, gravy, warm veg, all of it. The kind of meal people look forward to all year. When Mum finally came up, she didn't even meet my eyes. She handed me a plate of beige snacks for the kids and said, "There you go," like she'd done me a favour. By the time I managed to get downstairs, it was late. 8 o'clock, maybe. I'd spent ages coordinating parents collecting children, soothing tantrums, wiping faces, trying to stop someone climbing my chest of drawers. The dining room was empty apart from dirty plates and serving dishes scraped clean. The good bits gone. The roast potatoes reduced to sad crumbs. A lonely spoon in a bowl of cold gravy. Emma was already putting her coat on. "Oh, Chloe, Max was so good for you, wasn't he?" she said, breezy, as if I'd just babysat for half an hour. "We've got to go. It's past his bedtime." Sarah gathered her boys while chatting to Mum about New Year plans. My aunt wrestled her twins into boots. Cousins carried sleeping kids out to their cars. Not a single thank you, not one person asked if I'd eaten. Nobody even looked back. They just filed out, leaving me standing there surrounded by mess and cold leftovers. Then Mum called from the kitchen as if I hadn't just spent the entire day running after children. "Chloe, be a love and help me with the washing up." I stared at the mountain of plates, the evidence of a meal I hadn't been allowed to enjoy, and something in me went very still. The message from Mum arrived during exam week the next year, right as I was finishing my last essay of term. My phone buzzed and I expected the usual update. What I read made my stomach drop. She'd written, all cheerful, "Sarah and Emma are coming with the kids. Your aunt and her twins too, Rachel's 2 girls, Mike's little one. And exciting news. Sarah's sister-in-law is joining with her 3. It'll be such a lovely Christmas with all the little ones." I did the maths. 12 kids. 12. I sat in the library at university, staring at my phone until the screen dimmed, then lit it again, just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. It was the same message. Something in me shifted, quietly, like a door closing. 2 years away had given me perspective. I listened to Kate talk about going home to play board games with her family and actually eat dinner while it was hot. Friends moaned about minor stuff, like having to share the sofa or being forced to watch the same Christmas film every year. Meanwhile, I'd spent every holiday being used as free childcare. I didn't reply to Mum. Instead, I packed for the Christmas holidays with a strange, calm certainty. For the first time, I wasn't dreading going home, because I wasn't going home to give in. I was going home with a plan. The days leading up to Christmas were normal on the surface. I helped Mum in the kitchen. I decorated the tree. I hung the wonky ornaments I'd made in primary school next to the fancy ones Mum liked to have at the front. I smiled at Dad's jokes. I made cups of tea. I did everything I usually did. And all the while the plan sat in my chest like a quiet heartbeat. Christmas Day arrived with cars pulling up outside, one after another. The front door kept opening, letting in bursts of cold air and louder bursts of noise. Sarah arrived first with her boys, now 5 and 3, and an air of mild exhaustion that somehow always turned into entitlement. Emma came right after with Sophie and Max. Sarah's sister-in-law showed up with 3 children under 7. Then the rest of the relatives poured in, each family adding more kids to the growing chaos. I watched from the corner of the living room as the volume rose and rose, until it felt like the walls were buzzing. Sarah made her way towards me, her youngest balanced on her hip, the older one tugging at her sleeve. "Chloe," she called in that familiar tone, the tone that meant she was about to hand her job to someone else. "The boys have been so excited to see you. They can't wait to play with their favourite aunt." She was already nudging them towards me, the same way she'd done 100 times. But this time was different. This time I didn't reach out. I stood still and looked her straight in the eye. "No," I said, steady, even though my heart was thudding. "I'm not watching the kids today. I'm here to enjoy Christmas like everyone else." You could feel the shock move through the adults like a ripple. Sarah's mouth fell open. Mum froze in the doorway holding a plate of biscuits. Dad looked up from his paper, eyebrows raised. Emma's voice carried across the room, high and stressed. "But Chloe, who's going to watch all the kids?" I didn't answer, I just turned and walked upstairs. As I passed the family photos on the staircase, the ones that always seemed to be of Sarah and Emma smiling with certificates and trophies, I felt something unclench in me. I reached my old bedroom, stepped inside and closed the door. The click of it shutting sounded like the end of a very long sentence. I flopped onto my bed, the same narrow bed I'd had since I was a teenager, and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. Downstairs the chaos carried on without me. Adults calling out, children crying, something heavy hitting the floor. Snatches of conversation floated up through the ceiling. "Can you believe her?" someone said. "That's so selfish," someone else replied. "In my day," an older voice started, and then I stopped listening. My phone buzzed. "Kate, did you do it? Did you finally say it?" "Operation Freedom is happening," I typed back. "I'm upstairs while they work out how to parent their own children." There was a knock at my door. "Chloe," Mum's voice tried for gentle, but it landed somewhere between annoyed and desperate. "The kids are asking for you." I stared at the ceiling. "I'm busy, Mum." There was a sigh, loud enough that it might as well have been a speech, and then her footsteps retreated. I went back to my phone. My university group chat was going off, people sharing their own family drama in real time. Someone's uncle had turned up sulking. Someone's gran was interrogating them about relationships. Someone's mum was crying because the turkey was taking too long. For 2 hours I lay on my bed, messaging, laughing quietly, feeling more peaceful than I had on Christmas in years. Downstairs the energy changed. Not calm exactly, but different, like they'd stopped waiting for me and were forced to actually do something. When I finally came down for dinner, you'd have thought I'd crawled out of the grave. My aunt actually stopped mid-bite. My cousin's mouth hung open, frozen. Emma wasn't at the table. Through the doorway I could see her in the living room, trying to organise some kind of game with the children. Her hair, normally perfect, was coming loose. There was a stain on her festive jumper. She looked frazzled. I took a seat at the adult table. An adult seat, something I hadn't had at Christmas in years. The food was still hot, still fresh, still there. No cold leftovers, no scraped bowls, no sad little plate waiting in the kitchen once everyone else had finished. I started filling my plate. Turkey, roast potatoes, stuffing, sprouts, gravy. Mum's honey-glazed ham on the side. Proper Christmas dinner. The room was thick with disapproval. People stared like I'd committed a crime. The clink of cutlery couldn't cover the awkwardness. I'd just started actually enjoying my meal when Sarah finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She'd been watching me eat with a tight expression, like she was about to burst. "Well," she said loudly, sarcasm heavy in every word, "looks like someone's got a bit too big for their boots since going off to university. Forgotten all about being a sister, have you?" I swallowed, dabbed my mouth with my napkin and looked at her calmly. "Funny thing about being a sister," I said. "I don't remember free babysitter being part of it, but I do remember parents being meant to look after their own children." The reaction was ridiculous, little gasps. Someone's eyes widened. My aunt looked genuinely offended, like I'd insulted the Queen. Mum and Dad exchanged that look they always did when they were disappointed, but didn't want a scene. Dad's fork hovered halfway to his mouth. I waited for Mum to snap at me. Instead, Mum cleared her throat and asked my uncle about his new job, as if she could just steer the conversation away, like turning a shopping trolley. The table carried on, stiff and forced, but it carried on. I kept eating. Every bite tasted better because it was hot and it was mine. About 20 minutes into dinner, Emma appeared in the doorway. She looked like she'd been through a storm. Her jumper now had more stains and her hair had given up entirely. Sarah, she called, voice strained. Can you? Sarah shot me one last glare, then pushed her chair back and got up. She and Emma swapped places, Emma collapsing into Sarah's seat like her legs were about to fold. Emma filled her plate without thinking, then kept flicking her eyes towards me between bites, giving me a proper look. I met her gaze and shrugged, then went back to my dinner. After I'd finished, including a generous slice of pudding, I quietly stood up and excused myself. No one stopped me. No one asked me to help clear plates. No one told me to watch the kids. No one demanded I do the washing up. The next morning I came downstairs still feeling strangely light, like I'd finally done something I'd been meant to do years ago. That feeling vanished the moment I saw them. Mum, Dad, Sarah, Emma, all sitting in the living room, arranged like an ambush. Sarah didn't bother with small talk. What was that yesterday? She snapped. You made us look like terrible parents in front of everyone. I sank into an armchair, calmer than I expected. I didn't make you look like anything. I just refused to spend my Christmas being your unpaid babysitter while you lot sit down and relax. Mum frowned, genuinely confused. But you've never complained before. I let out a laugh, short and sharp. I have complained. For years. You just ignored it because it was convenient, didn't you? It was easier to label me helpful than admit you were using me. They all started talking at once, overlapping like a messy choir. Sarah went on about family duty. Emma talked about how hard it is being a mum. Dad started listing everything they'd done for me as if it was a receipt. Mum said I was being dramatic, that it was Christmas, that I was ruining the mood. I waited until the noise died down. Then I spoke quietly, so they had to listen. They're not my children, I said. I didn't choose to have them. They're your responsibility, not mine. And Christmas is meant to be a break for me as well. That's when Sarah played what she clearly thought was the winning card. She stood up, face flushed with anger, chin lifted. Fine. Maybe you need a lesson in gratitude. Let's see how you manage when Mum and Dad stop paying for your university. The room went silent. Mum and Dad looked at each other, startled, because Sarah had always assumed they were paying for everything. Sarah watched me, waiting for panic, waiting for tears, waiting for me to fold. Instead, I felt something like relief. Finally, there it was, the truth behind all of it. I stood up slowly. Actually, Sarah, Gran's been paying. She blinked. I kept my voice steady. Gran rose. From the education fund Grandad set up for his grandkids. The same one that helped you through your nursing course, and Emma through hers. Mum went pale. Dad's mouth opened slightly, then shut again. And for the record, I added, Mum and Dad have been topping up bits of living costs when they can, not paying my fees. I've got a bursary as well. And I can work. I'm not afraid of supporting myself. Nobody spoke. I didn't wait for them to find words. I turned and went upstairs. It took me less than 10 minutes to pack. I'd had years of practice travelling light, mostly because I never felt properly at home there anyway. When I came back down with my bag, Mum stood up quickly. Chloe, don't be like this, she said, voice wobbling now. We can talk. Dad called after me, frustrated and worried at the same time. Emma looked like she might cry. Sarah looked furious, but there was something else in her face too. A flicker of fear, maybe, that her little threat hadn't worked. I walked out the front door. The cold air hit my cheeks and woke me up properly. I got into my car, hands steady, and pulled away. The motorway stretched out ahead, grey winter sky above it, and the further I got from Watford, the lighter I felt. When I pulled into the services, I blocked their numbers. Mum. Tap. Dad. Tap. Sarah. Tap. Emma. Tap. Each one felt like snapping a link I hadn't realised had been tight around my ribs. Back in Manchester, my room in halls welcomed me with its quiet. No toys on the floor, no shouting, no background noise that never stopped. Just my books, my laptop, my own space. January came and went in a blur of lectures and small plans and peaceful weekends. February brought cold mornings and no family drama, and it felt lovely. I threw myself into work, met friends for coffee, went for walks, lived like a normal person. Then, one Saturday morning towards the end of February, I looked out of my window and saw them. Mum, Dad, and Emma, standing in the car park, looking out of place among students in hoodies, heading to the library. They looked smaller somehow. Less like the people who'd controlled my life, more like people who weren't sure how to fix what they'd broken. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't in, but something about the way Mum stood, hands clasped, shoulders tense, made me pause. I went down to meet them in the lobby. Emma spoke first, softer than usual. "Can we buy you a coffee? We'd like to talk." We went to the campus cafe. It was quiet, warm, steam rising from cups, the kind of place people sat to revise and gossip. We took a corner table. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Mum took a breath. "We've been thinking," she said, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "After you left, we had some long conversations." "Really long," Emma added, meeting my eyes properly. "Chloe, we were wrong, all of us. We took advantage of you for years, and we called it family duty to make ourselves feel better." Dad nodded slowly. "We didn't see it, or we didn't want to see it. You deserved your own holidays, your own time. You deserved to be treated like an adult, not like the default babysitter." I took a sip of coffee, letting their words settle. "What about Sarah?" I asked. Emma's face tightened a little. "Sarah's still digging her heels in. You know what she's like. She hates being wrong." Mum's eyes looked tired. "But we want to do better. We want things to be different." Emma leaned forward slightly. "No more pushing kids onto you. No more expecting you to give up your time. We want you to come home because you want to, not because we need you." I watched them for a moment. Mum looked genuinely sorry. Dad looked ashamed. Emma looked exposed, like she'd finally admitted something she'd been avoiding. "All right," I said quietly. "I believe you." That evening, after they left, I unblocked their numbers. A few minutes later, a message came through from Emma. "Miss you, little sis, properly, for real this time." Over the next months, things did change. I went home for the odd weekend, and it was all right. More than all right, actually. When Emma brought the kids, she watched them herself, or she arranged childcare if she needed it. Mum stopped trying to orchestrate those family bonding moments that always ended with me carrying the load. Sarah and I still didn't speak. Sometimes I saw her posts online, pictures of the boys getting taller, birthdays, school plays, smiling faces. A part of me hoped she'd one day realise what she'd done, and that she'd be the one to reach out first. But until then, I was at peace with the distance. For the first time in my life, I had a Christmas story that belonged to me.